Welcome to this screencast on how to do a basic import of contact information. We're going to show today how to handle errors, how to handle duplicates, and also we'll provide some general tips on the import workflow and best way to be successful with your imports. So it always starts with a little prep. First, you really should be familiar with the data that's in your database, particularly around the contact information. So I like to make sure first that I understand that. So I'm going to go to a contact record and I'm going to look up somebody really quickly. It's easy to understand when you can see the record, right? So here I note, here's some contact information, and we're talking about information on the summary tab. So obviously there's names, there's email, home phones, addresses, maybe you're handling some demographics. You can see also there may be some, you maybe want to consider if there's any required fields. In this database, in PowerBase, there is one required field. Now it depends on your organization if you have this required field or not, but it may be something you want to make sure you import. So you want to make sure you see what the options are and you're using the same labels that for those pieces of data when you're doing your import. So you just want to take a look at your contact records and just make sure you have the fields available or the fields of information that you want to import in that spreadsheet. So let's take a look at the spreadsheet. Now the spreadsheet, this is your import file. And notice that the names are split into separate columns, first name, middle name, last name. Same thing with address. They need to be separated out by street address, city, state, a zip code. You may have a zip 4. Phone numbers, really key here. You don't want to have multiple phone numbers in one column. If you have multiple phone numbers, create a separate column, figure out which is the home one. Maybe the other one's a work phone or an other type. Is it a mobile phone? Same thing with email addresses. Note here I have a couple more pieces of information on the contact record that I'm going to import. That constituent type field that's required, at least in our database it is, so I want to make sure information is there for that. And I'm also going to import district information for this particular case. So a lot of work happens in your spreadsheet. Just a quick tip. Sometimes what I do is I will filter the whole sheet. And this way I can sort of check, do I have all my names in there? And I notice here my first names, there's no blanks. Perfect. Do I have last names like that? Same thing. So just, you can go down, you can make sure also the great thing about filtering, like for these fields here that have different options, like the constituent type, I can filter those and I could make sure, okay, these are the proper ones and I don't have any weird looking values in there or misspelled values in there. So you're going to need to spend a little time in your spreadsheet. Okay. So once you feel like your spreadsheet's in decent condition, you want to make sure you save it as a .csv file. If you can see here on the name, it is a comma separated value. So you just have to make sure when you're saving, you can do a file, save as, and then save it as your .csv file, the comma separated value. So I'm just going to save this and let's just close this out for a second. And now we're going to go in and I can actually save it, but I've already done it. So I'm not going to save it again. I'm going to go in now and show you how to start the import. Now remember, we're just doing the basic import for the contact information. So to get started, I'm going to go to Contacts, Import Contacts, and now I'm going to go through and start answering on this first screen. This is the data source screen. So notice there's several steps. I'm going to browse first to select the file I want. So I'm going to go to my file, and it is under here. I'm going to grab my exercise. And if you remember my spreadsheet, my first row had column headers. Really helpful to have those column headers so you can do the mapping of the fields. I also like to get the names pretty close to the names of the fields, so it's easier for the mapping. Import options, contact type. Note here, I should have mentioned everybody on that, all the contacts on that spreadsheet we're all of type individuals. You can't mix both trying to import an individual and an organization at the same time. You need to separate those out. So my sheet only contains the individual. And here I'm going to decide to how I want to handle my duplicates. I'm going to decide to skip it first so that if there is a duplicate, I can decide to do something with them later. What happens is when the database finds a duplicate, when you do the import, it will send back to you a duplicate file. So it will contain all the same information of your original import, plus it will add on additional columns in the beginning to tell you which were the duplicate and which line number. So I'm going to skip so I can decide like, I need to do a different type of import. And notice there are these different ones. There's an update import, which I will do on my second pass, and I'll show you that. Update, what it will do is like if it finds a duplicate, it will just go in and update the information in that duplicate, in the record that it finds. So that means the match. It finds a match. It will update with the information that's in your import spreadsheet onto that contact record. All right, so it'll just update it all. If you do a fill, what a fill will do is that if it finds that match, it's only going to fill in the information if there's blank information in the database. So if the information is empty in that field, it's going to take what's in the spreadsheet and insert that information into that field. Now there's one here for no duplicate checking. There may be a reason for that. You don't want to do any duplicate checking. You just want to add everybody into the database, and then you handle maybe your deduping later. So since I'm doing a skip, it's going to rely on a dedupe rule. I'm going to go in and select my rule. Now in this case, I know that in my spreadsheet, I had first name, last name, and email. So I'm going to use that as my dedupe check. And so I'm going to use the unsupervised rule, which is the most strictest rule, which is discussed in another screencast. But I'm going to grab this one since I have those three pieces of information inside my spreadsheet. Going to keep the comma. I don't really have any dates, but you should note here what dates you would using. And most of the time we're using this third one here, this month, day, year. But sometimes you may be getting things in on this first one. Do not geocode the addresses during the import. That will just drive your import to a halt because it does a lookup on each record. The database will geocode addresses during a scheduled job. So I strongly suggest do not check this. It will get updated later. So I'm going to click continue. I've entered this information. I like to review it. I'm going to go to continue. So now I'm going to get to this match fields tab, this next screen. And here I can start matching. So note here, remember my dedupe rule, first name, last name, and email. So notice it's already going to pick up the first name because it could figure out almost the label that I had. First name, there's the middle name, there's the last name. Now address here, this is the street address because it's the street, and I'm going to make these home, all home. The city is home, the state is home, and the zip code, which is considered postal code in the database, is home. My mobile phone, I'm going to make it's home, but it's a mobile. I'm going to make it type mobile, which was a way to remind me. The email, we're going to make it home, and there's the other match to the contact. And here, it didn't know what to do with it, but I'm going to map it now to my school. And sometimes if you just start typing, and then this one is the constituent type. So if you start typing, sometimes it'll find it. Sometimes you have to go look for it. I think it's called individual constituent type. There it is, individual constituent type info. And I just review the mapping. Again, make sure I got it right. And you have this option here to save the mapping. Now, if you're going to do multiple imports after, which I plan to do if there's any duplicates, I want to save this mapping so I don't have to remember how to do it again. Remember, as long as the fields, the columns are in the proper place. So I may save it, and I'm just going to call it my contact info import, just so I know it's an import I can use, a mapping that I could use. I'm going to call it mapping. So I'm going to click on continue. And on this first run, it's going to see if there's any issues. Uh-oh, I have one row with an error. So what I'm going to do is let me take a look at this error. So I'm going to actually download that error file. It's great because you can just back out and start again. And in this case, you can download it. I'm just going to open it just for, because it's quicker. I'm just going to open it and take a look because it's only one row. Let's see what this issue is. An invalid email address on line 14 with Stephanie Purdon. And let's take a look at what is happening here. I can see now. So the email is not a proper email. It's missing an @ sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back out to my original. I'll save this just so I have it for later. I'm going to go in and open up. Let me just save this this duplicate error file. Let me open up, and I'm just gonna not worry about this because I'm gonna close it. So I'm gonna open up the actual file that I had, and I'm gonna fix it. So I'm gonna go here. Whoops, wrong one. I'm gonna go to the file. And again, you can open it up in various different things. I figured I'd try different ones. And remember, if it was line 14, and remember line 14 excludes the label, I'm going to go find Stephanie in there, Stephanie. And I'm going to go in and fix that email address. This should be an @ sign, right? So now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to save it as an updated so I know that this is actually the updated one. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to call it corrected, just so we have the proper file. And again, I could have resaved over the same one, but sometimes I like to keep my current file. I already saved this, so I don't need to save it. So there's my corrected file. So now I can go back in, and I'm going to redo this import. So I like to start again. Contacts, import contacts. I'm going to go again. So I'm going to go in. And so you may have to go through several iterations of this if you keep finding errors. Something else may pop up. So I'm going to use my corrected file. Again, first row is the column headers, individual. Again, it's skip. We're going to skip the dedupe. I'm going to use my dedupe rule for the name and email. There's no dates, but you can put it there if you want. I'm going to load this import mapping. So this is where it's helpful because it's going to remember, right? Everything. I still check it. I always check it, right? Computers aren't, they're not that smart. So I like to check just in case anything looks funny. So there's the match to contact, and it's saved this school district voter info and the constituent info individuals. So I don't need to update the mapping. And now I'm going to continue and see if that error is gone. Great. No errors. So awesome. So you can just review it one more time. And then here is a tip. Anytime we do an import, it's best practice to create a temporary static group, a regular group, so that you can see the contact information, the records that are being imported in the database, and then you can verify them. You could do more with them. Maybe you're doing updates to them, or maybe you need to back out, right? So I like to create, I'm going to just call it Alice's contact import. And I'm not going to do anything of this. This is just my temporary group so I can find it. And now I am ready to go. I'm going to click import now. And it always gives you that warning to back up your database. But we back up the databases every night. So here we go. I have it imported 23. 2 are duplicates. So now I'm going to have to decide what to do with it. So what I'm going to do is download those duplicates. And here I'm going to save it. I'm going to save this in my, my place here under my, I'm going to do, that was the error. We named that wrong, but I'm going to do in my import duplicates. So I'm going to get save, right? And you can see already the first 21 are already in there, but I'm going to just hit done on this, and I'm going to go review my duplicate import. So let me go over here, and it's called import duplicates. So let's take a look at this, and I'm going to open it up just to take a look at what's there. And this will always show me different things. I'm just going to open this up. So here I have 2. I have Ann Irving and Winfrey Bentley. Notice it says skipping duplicate record, right? So now I can decide, notice it kept everything. Now in this case, I know that I had gotten this list. It was just like this meeting someplace. I got this list and I know this is the latest information. So I'm going to choose on this one just to go ahead and do an update import. Now it's going to matter. It's going to be, maybe it's different for you. Maybe you have to take a look at those records and see, well, do I have better information in there or is this really updated information? So you're going to have to decide. But I know for me that this is the latest and best information. So I'm going to do an import update. So what I'm going to do here, so it all matches up, because I'm just going to actually just delete these first two columns. Why? Because remember that mapping we did? If I delete those two columns, then at least the mapping will be the same. But I'm going to keep this name of the file, and I'm going to just hit save. So I'm going to save it. And yes, we'll keep it as CSV, and then I can close it. And it always asks me to save it. So I'm going to go close that, and I'm going to do that import again. One last time. Contacts, import contacts. And I'm going to go here and do the same process. I'm going to browse for that import duplicate. That was the one that was updating. I'm going to have the first row is column headers. This time, it isn't even, this time I'm going to go update. So match on my name and email. I'm going to say update. Again, there's really no date, but you could leave it. I'm going to load that mapping I created. Click continue. And so now we'll just verify and make sure I have the things mapped the way I want it mapped. And there they are, they're all home. And I can now hit continue. And again, it's showing the total rows to be imported. And I also want to add these two to that, sorry, it's an existing group because we just created to that Alice's contact import, because I want to have them as part of that group that I've imported. So now it's going to import. Here we go. Importing the records. Great. Those two are imported. So now I can just go to the group and it gives you a little hyperlink there. So I'm going to go link on that group and you can take a look at the records. There's my 23 records. There's that, you can see the duplicate one that was there. And it's always good to verify the information. And there's Ann Irvin is also there. Verify the information, make sure it is what it is. And that is how you do a basic import of your contact information.